Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Thursday everybody. Today's video will be very focused on developments in US-China relations. While still in a deep strategic competition with the United States, Beijing appears to be interested now to see some stabilization in the relationship as it seeks to focus on serious domestic issues at home, not least with the economy. A Xi Jinping visit to San Francisco next month appears all but certain at this point. Yesterday, Wednesday, Xi Jinping met with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is currently visiting the PRC. The meeting is a goodwill gesture, but Beijing also will use the opportunity to get to know more about a likely future US presidential candidate. State media was relatively positive about the meeting. Newsom told US media that he had a positive conversation about fentanyl, telling US-based Politico, quote, "The president was rather explicit about the desire to be even more specific in terms of what is needed in terms of calling out and identifying where these chemicals are going," end quote. Speaking to US-based Bloomberg, Newsom said, quote, "I made the point that I'm here with an open hand, not a closed fist. I'm mindful of the strategic red lines in our relationship, but I'm also mindful that we're more than capable of managing them," end quote. In a separate statement, Newsom said he discussed the issue of human rights with China's foreign minister, but not with Xi himself. Asked by US media why he didn't, Newsom responded, quote, "Look, I can't be everything to everybody, every moment of every minute of every day," end quote. He also discussed climate issues with Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Newsom also met with Vice President Han Zheng, where he stated that China's development achievements, especially in the field of new energy, are admirable, and cooperation between the US and China is not a zero-sum game. Commentators have noted that Beijing's US strategy appears to be leaning into avoiding China hawks in the administration and going straight to the people at local and subnational levels, like Newsom. Also yesterday, Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory message to the annual gala dinner of the National Committee on US-China Relations, where he expressed, quote, "China is willing to engage with the US based on the 3 principles of mutual trust, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation," end quote. US President Biden also sent a letter of congratulations to the National Committee on US-China Relations with similar salutations. And this brings us to the US side of the Pacific. Also yesterday, Wednesday, US President Joe Biden met with Australia's Prime Minister before the leader travels to Beijing to mend poor Australian-China relations. Critically for us, who've been following the growing tensions in the South China Sea, speaking alongside Australia's Prime Minister, Biden warned the People's Republic of China over Second Thomas Scholl, saying that, quote, "The United States' defense commitment to the Philippines is ironclad. Any attack on Filipino aircraft, vessels, or armed forces will invoke our mutual defense treaty with the Philippines," end quote. He took the opportunity to also, quote, "reaffirm the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and our shared opposition to unilateral changes to the status quo," end quote. Meanwhile, also this week, China and Colombia have upgraded their relationship to strategic partnership, in a sign that Washington has some competition for influence with its principal ally in South America. The Colombian president is in China for a 3-day state visit, where he met with Xi Jinping. The upgrade of relations with Colombia means China now has strategic ties with 10 out of 11 South American countries with which it has relations. State-run Global Times writes that the Colombian leader, quote, "has strong wishes to boost infrastructure construction. After taking office, expects to leverage China's financial resources, technology, and management experience to help achieve the goal of modernizing Colombia's infrastructure development," end quote. Next up, we return to US-China developments, but first, we need to briefly discuss what's just happened in Hong Kong. If you're getting some value from today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button. Sharing and subscribing is a big help too. And for anyone who can go the extra mile, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This channel relies primarily on subscriber support to keep going and remain open. Thank you so much everybody for the ongoing support. In his policy address yesterday, Hong Kong's chief executive John Lee announced that the Special Administrative Region is to finalize legislation of Article 23, a controversial national security provision, by 2024. In the address, Li said that Hong Kong, quote, must stay vigilant against the possible resurgence of street violence, be conscious of covert rebellions through soft resistance, and watch out for those anti-government movements overseas looping back to Hong Kong, end quote. He also announced that Hong Kong would set up a so-called patriotic education working group, quote, coordinating the work of government departments and non-governmental organizations in taking forward national education and dovetailing with the patriotic education law of the People's Republic of China with a view to enhancing education of our country's history, culture and current affairs on different fronts, thereby promoting patriotism and ensuring its continuity from generation to generation, end quote. It also announced that Hong Kong authorities will establish a so-called Hong Kong War of Resistance and Coastal Defence Museum next year. The new museum, quote, will primarily showcase the history of the People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression, aiming to bolster national confidence and patriotic spirit, end quote, in the words of state-run Global Times. Finally, we once again return to US-China relations. I wanted to end by looking at two pieces recently published by leading voices in Washington's China debate. The first is from US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in the latest issue of Foreign Affairs titled The Sources of American Power. We're now quoting some of this essay directly. The coming era of competition will be unlike anything experienced before. European security competition in the 19th and early 20th centuries was largely a regional contest between mid-sized and proximate powers that ultimately ended in calamity. The Cold War that followed, the most destructive war in human history, was waged between two superpowers that had very low levels of interdependence, that ended decisively and in America's favor. Today's competition is fundamentally different. The United States and China are economically interdependent. The contrast is truly global, but not zero-sum. The shared challenges the two sides face are unprecedented. We are often asked about the end state of US competition with China. We expect China to remain a major power on the world stage for the foreseeable future. We do not expect a transformative end state like the one that resulted from the collapse of the Soviet Union. Washington and Beijing need to figure out how to manage competition to reduce tensions and find a way forward on shared challenges. Unfortunately, Beijing has often appeared to have drawn different lessons from managing tensions, concluding that guardrails can fuel competition in the same way that seatbelts encourage reckless driving. The second piece is from Ryan Hass, a former US official and now senior fellow at think tank Brookings. His piece, also in Foreign Affairs, is called What America Wants from China. Once again, we quote parts of the piece directly. The absence of a compelling vision of success for the United States' strategy with China is dangerous. If the American people do not know the purpose of their country's strategy, they will be less likely to support US policy or make sacrifices in service of it. To overcome this limitation, Washington needs to set an objective on China that would enjoy durable domestic support and be compatible with foreign partners' priorities. Meanwhile, the United States should maintain a strong military to deter China from using force against the United States or its security partners. This strategy departs from the Cold War goal of aiming to isolate the Soviet Union and compel its collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. Today, Washington's goal should be to keep China entangled in a global system that regulates interstate behavior and pushes Beijing to conclude that the best path to its realization of its national ambitions would be to operate within existing rules and norms. Here ends this direct quote also. What are your thoughts on these essays from these top thinkers in the US's China debate? Let me know in the comments section below. That is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a wonderful Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.